We very much want Panoramic Pediatrics to stay Panoramic Pediatrics and not be owned by anyone but us. So then if that's going to be our strategy, how are we going to do that? How are we going to survive in this current atmosphere? We had mentioned how we just really have organic growth and we haven't had to go out and seek that. The other thing we talked about when we made this move is we did a lot of discussions about, do we want to open a satellite instead and spread in that direction, right? Rather than go with one bigger place, do we want to start to spread geographically? This time we decided not to do that. But this is, like you had mentioned before, this is a pretty big office, 33 examiners, room for 10, 11 docs to operate at one time. If we were to continue to grow, that's the other thing we run into up here, upstate New York, Monroe County. We're losing population. We are not only is the birth rate creeping down, but people are leaving for greener pastures. All of these schools, rosters are slowly going down over time. So that's also something that we have to look at and say, okay, what are we going to do with that? How are we going to manage that? How much more do we think we can actually grow, especially being in one place? So this is the current. 5 years down the road, is this going to mean, I don't see us growing any bigger in this space, right? So does that mean, do we start to do a satellite kind of thing or something like that? It's a valid question. We've lightly had those discussions, landed on move to a bigger office. That's about as far as we got.
A couple of questions are very local to your market. How can you survive with one health plan on 70% of the market?
It's a very unique situation up here, without a doubt. But the more I kind of involved, it's interesting. Kind of. Once again, with our margins being as thin as they are, I don't know. I'm very much, my undergrad degree actually it was an interdisciplinary degree. It was called Health and Society. But I did a lot of public policy, medical economics, this kind of thing. That was my undergrad degree. So I'm very much actually a free market guy. And so my first impulse is, having a monopoly like that on their end, this is terrible. It handcuffs us, right? Problem being, though, I think more the issue is the difference in size. It's the David and Goliath between us and a company we might want to negotiate with in some way, shape, or form. Because I think to myself, let's say they only had 25% of the market. That's still too much of a share. I think of the way our margins run, let's say they were only 25% and we said, we need XYZ or we're going to drop you. And you don't want to say that unless you're intending to do the thing. Right? So you have to be willing to then drop them. Let's say we drop them and half the patients left, that would be 12.5% of our practice. Couldn't we even weather that? I don't think we could. I think it's telling. There's been a few practices that have stared them down over the last 10 years, I would say. It's always been a specialty, right? There was about 10, 15 years ago, it was a plastic surgery group. More recently, it was, I think, a radiology group, if I remember correctly. And so it's never been a primary care group that's done it, because you think about those practices, they're making enough money that they can take a little skin off the end of their nose in order to go through that negotiation. And I don't think we wouldn't be able to do that. There's no stomach for it. But I think part of it too is our Medicaid payments here in New York State are very low. So yes, there is one company that has quite a monopoly here in town. They aren't a horrible payer. They're not our worst. They're not our best. So it allows us to operate.